Ladies and gentlemen,
niggas and crackers,
guys, gals,
and non-binary pals, hot girls and city boys,
saints and ain'ts,
and all our Harlem family, welcome to your very own podcast.
Welcome one and all back to another episode of Harlem's very own podcast. As always, it is your two illustrious co-hosts, Justin Winley, aka Norin Rad in the Black, aka Jaden Pinkett, aka Winley Snipes, joined by my boy.
Yo, what's up? It's a mulatto gelato Jude, aka Atheist Jesus, aka Teenage Mutant Ninja Nigga.
We are back with a new program, and as you've noticed by now, of course, we also have a brand new smoking cover art by the lovely Shalini Jasinge, all the way from Sydney, Australia. She is a right talented Sheila.
Don't do that.
We appreciate all her hard work. Cheers.
Stop.
No, but really, shout out to Shalini. She
Instagram's a beautiful place.
Yeah, complete serendipity that she got connected with us through Instagram, and then we hit her up, and she did the work. Very quickly. She's so absolutely follow her and show her some love.
What's her Instagram
from Harlem's Heroes. Oh, her Instagram is her name at Shalini Jasinge. So that's SHALINIJASINGE. And if you need that again, you can rewind it. So what we're doing is, I think I mentioned it. We mentioned it a little bit at the end of the last episode, but there's a lot of black movies I haven't seen. A lot of classic stuff.
It's very disappointing as a young man Harlem with this co-host over here.
Right, and it's been kind of it's been a mark on me for a while. You know, I've tried to avoid it, but we figured, well, we're doing Harlem's very own, and maybe this is an excuse, especially now that everybody's home, to catch up on some stuff that I haven't seen before. So we have a list of movies that we're going to get through for the next 3 episodes, but we're starting today with 1991's New Jack City, which was directed by Mario Van Peebles, who is the son of Melvin Van Peebles, who's a legendary blaxploitation director. He directed this movie called Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, which is... that's a movie that everyone should see. I can't really describe it.
For real?
It's not like... It's technically, like, as far as how films are supposed to be made, it's not the best thing. But it's just... There's nothing really like it, like Sweetback. I feel like you'd enjoy it, Jude. That might be a new AKA for you after you see it. I haven't seen the movie in a while.
I'm looking at it. I can see the heroine in the picture. Like, I'm not even looking at her. I can just see it in the picture.
It exudes that energy. Yeah. So
continue.
So it's a key film in blaxploitation. Maybe like the first. Definitely one of the first films, following this idea of black power, black liberation, specifically a black man or black woman kind of being this antisocial vigilante and taking, justice into their own hands. It's pretty important. And so his son, Mario, this was his first feature film. And he was actually contacted. He was referred to it. Basically, he was vouched for by Clint Eastwood, which I found out. Because they had worked on this movie together beforehand, and the producers wanted a director for this, but they were unsure about taking a chance on a new guy. But Clint was like, "Yeah, it's fine. He's got my blessing or whatever." So shout out Clint Eastwood. Even though he's got, he's an old guy, so he's got some.
Real quick though, actually, I wanted to ask you, since you're a film student, what is to you the difference between a movie, film, or cinema? because I was watching something back about Scorsese talking about Marvel movies being
Right.
not film or not cinema, the art of it. So I want to know
Yeah.
how you define it as an
Oh.
actor, as a film student, as a film lover, and also want to know what got you started into acting and shit like that. It's a lot right now, but
No, yeah, no, that's a good question. Well, I was doing acting in middle school, sort of. We had this thing called theater arts at center school, or tax. So we would have tax shows, and they were just like skits that we put together. It was nothing really too serious. In 8th grade, I played Oliver Warbucks, or Daddy Warbucks, in Annie. So that was like my first big role, so to speak. That was the biggest thing I'd ever done by that point. But by the time I got to there, it was just a teacher of mine, Mr. Valdez. He basically told me, like, I think you could audition for LaGuardia and like you'd have a shot if you went for drama. And I, at that point, wasn't really thinking about that at all. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a zoologist, and then I was getting older, and my dad was like, "You could make a lawyer." And I've always liked movies, but I didn't necessarily know that. I don't remember wanting to be an actor when I was that young. So, but he brought it up to me. So, and I'd gotten a taste, obviously, by now for stage acting. So he gave me to the process is like they give us monologues. We have to have a dramatic one and a comedic one. Mr. Valdez helped me find them. He suggested them. I rehearsed them. I performed them for center school, or one of them for center school, and then I went to LaGuardia and auditioned, and I got in. And then from then on, I was like, okay, I think I really do love doing this. When I came to the end of high school, I didn't want to go to conservatory, but I knew, like in my heart of hearts, I wanted to continue. I wanted to stay in this field, in this arena. So obviously, I had a long college journey, but when I got to Pace, I was like, okay, I've tried doing communications, I've tried media journalism or whatever. Let me just do what I know I want to do and go for film and screen studies. And it's been really cool so far. So like, and I wanted to do that because I'm also a writer. So I want to get, because I just love, like, I'll always feel comfortable on a stage. And if I ever get a Broadway gig, like I'll take it, obviously, but
after COVID.
Yes, way after. But film to me is maybe my favorite medium when it comes to like performance and artistic expression. And I just love what it can do and all the different ways you can make it. So I wanted to get basically a good idea of the behind the scenes stuff, so that I'm never an actor who's ignorant of all the other aspects of what happens on a film set, right? So as far as what I think the differences are, a lot of it honestly just comes down to people feeling, as with anything, people get pretentious. There's a point where now you're part of this group or this culture or whatever, and you need to know like the ways people communicate. So for me, the distinction, and not to disregard Martin Scorsese, who's obviously one of the greatest of his generation and one of the greatest of all time. I think like when he said that, I kind of felt the same way a lot of people did, of like, well, that just seems like it's an old man kind of shaking his fist at the future. But I first of all, I think what he was saying was really he was concerned about how superhero films or just major blockbusters are pushing out independent films, literally because like they're taking up more theaters. Like they're taking up more showings and screenings, so that other films don't get as much of a chance because these movies make more money. And that is a very valid point. So I think that when people talk about film, like, it comes from obviously the literal physical film that used to make these used to use to record these stories. I think movies, it comes from that's just like the informal term because we had silent pictures and then when we got talkies. So I think movies is part of that. Like instead of a still picture, it's a moving picture. It's a movie. And then cinema is like, again, I think it's one of those things that's like used to describe the craft, but it's also used to describe the space that you watch film in. Like I went to the cinema, and for me, like I do tend to reserve the word film for movies that I think are like more whatever, more
like
artistic.
Godfather,
Yeah.
Raging Bull,
Yeah,
fucking,
stuff like that.
like Schindler's List or some shit.
Exactly. But at the same time, it's not that I can't call those things movies, and then it's not like if I say, Avengers: Infinity War is a good film, I'm not going to feel like I'm contradicting myself. But that is a good question because I think that and it's especially interesting that you brought up Scorsese, because this movie is obviously very influenced by like gangster movies and Coppola and Scorsese. And
we're gonna get into
they actually pitched. One of the things that I thought was interesting was when it comes to Wesley, they pitched this to him as like Black Scarface. Essentially, they were like Black Pacino. Yeah.
I was watching something about gangster films, period, from Godfather to Scarface, but also the original Scarface in the 50s, or was it the 30s?
Oh, there's another one? I didn't know.
There was a Scarface before the Pacino one. Okay. And it was, kind of the same story, though. It's an immigrant. I think it's an Italian immigrant. Comes to America, doesn't have shit, doesn't have anything, and then his rise to the top, but then his fall. But it also, in the video, it also mentions how we all get stuck in the rise.
Yes.
And it's glamorized, and he's almost he's turned into a hero, a martyr. But then in other films, like Once Upon a Time in America, in Scarface we see ugly shit, him snorting coke, him smacking his girlfriend, doing whatever the hell. But in Once Upon a Time in America, you can see all the ugliness of it, And I forgot where I was going with this, but it was basically just how like gangster films are just the rise and fall, and that's what New Jack City was. It 100%. Is the rise and fall of Nino Brown, CMB, but during the time that it came out, it was after crack, and I think it was also it was pitched as a gangster movie, but I also thought it was a scared straight tactic for
definitely for youth,
for the kids in the crack generation. Because in the movie, I remember seeing what stood out to me now that I watched it again, because I've seen like 2 or 3 times before this. Was Ice-T is just looking at kids in a school, and it's a teacher and a bunch of these little kids, and it's the say no thing. You say no to drugs, you say yes to education, yes to dedication, yes to whatever the hell, and then you see crack vials everywhere. And I felt like that was kind of like strategically put there. There's like things in the movie that are strategically put in there for to scare people out of doing crack.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think even from the beginning, and we can just like get into the movie now, because it really is. The more I think about it, and now that we're talking about it, the more I like it. I'd never seen this before, but I watched it with my mom because she's seen it a bunch of times.
What do you think? What do you think about watching it with you? I'm sorry.
Well, she enjoyed it, and she likes the movie. She said she's seen it like over 10 times, maybe like even 20. It's always interesting because like when you live in New York, I know that I've heard other New York film podcasts talk about this, where it's like you're watching something that's been shot in New York and you can tell when the geography is off. Like you can tell when someone is, and there's a scene early on, Mom and I were watching, they're driving up like 140th and St. Nicholas, and they're going up, and we know that route because we take it frequently coming back from church. I even saw a funeral home that's still there from when it was shot. They're driving up almost actually to 147th, almost like they almost get there where we would turn up and go to Broadway. But then they cut when G-Money stands up in the car. Yeah, they cut to a shot going down Lenox Avenue, and then the scene ends with them going down. So it's like, if you live in Harlem, you're like, well, that's not at all how that works. But it didn't really take me out of the movie per se. But yeah, she enjoyed watching it, and she was actually putting me on to some of the context. Like you were singing, "Living for the City." Two of the guys who are standing around that trash can are sons of the original OJ's singing group from the 70s.
Oh, that's dope.
But yeah, so it opens with this quote from Niggas with Attitude, I think, from Straight Outta Compton. You're about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Yeah, and that's just a dope way to open a movie. And also, you're watching then this helicopter shot over the skyline, which is when I watched Melvin Van Peebles talk about it in the in that little documentary, he was like, we wanted people to know, like, this isn't just your average little gangster movie. Like, we got money for this. And they definitely showed
money
off.
For this. And some money you can sell, they were running out in some things.
Yes. Definitely. But, go big or go home.
Big bags.
Immediate, and my mom actually was helpful in pointing this out for me because I was looking away from the TV. There's a point where they come to a building and it has a scripture mural on it. And it's from
I saw that.
1 Corinthians 6 and 9. And they edit it, but they basically say, don't be deceived, neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor abusers of themselves with mankind, nor thieves, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor extortioners shall inherit the kingdom of God. And off rip, they're establishing that like the movie is about idolatry. That's one of the major themes. And like, so people who worship things, and what we worship in order to fill ourselves. And it's also interesting that because that scripture, the words in itself are powerful, but when you also think about the book of Corinthians is actually a letter that was written by Paul to a church in Corinth, a Christian church, to kind of address several issues that were going on. So it's basically like a manifesto that wound up in the Bible, and it kind of fits with New Jack City because it's New Jack City. The producers are addressing issues that are going on in the community. It's almost like a letter to the nation regarding, crime and all of that. So I thought that was interesting just off rip. But we see that, and then we get introduced right after. Is that after they drop the white dude off the bridge or before?
That mural is after. That's when we get introduced to Chris Rock and Ice-T, Pookie, and
right. Pookie and Scotty, yeah. And what a way to introduce your main character. Like this. So what's interesting about Wesley Snipes in this movie is that he had been in stuff before. Like by this point, he'd already been in Jungle Fever. He'd been in the Bad video with Michael Jackson, which I didn't know until today. He's in the extended like short films.
My videos are mad long.
Yeah.
Like a Scooby-Doo episode, bro. Like.
Speaking of Martin Scorsese, he directed that music video.
Martin Scorsese directed a music video?
Michael Jackson had a pull like that. He was like, Quincy, I want Marty to direct my music video, and Quincy was like, "Yeah, Michael, we can do." I don't know. Is that how Quincy Jones sounds?
Yeah, Michael. I'm sorry. I remember I was watching Diaz Samero, and that's all that nigga said, like, motherfucker.
Yeah, that's his favorite word. That's a great documentary. Have you seen that? The Quincy documentary?
Oh, hell yeah. Like 3 times. I love that,
was fire. It was fire. Anyway, not to get off track. So Wesley, he'd been in Jungle Fever. I think he'd been in Mo Better Blues, too.
Yeah.
Like, he was mostly a Spike Lee guy. And then, and he'd been in some other stuff, but he, like Chris Rock says in the documentary, he was the least famous person on set.
That's
and
crazy.
At first I was like, that's
crazy to think about.
But then I looked it up and I was like, well, Chris Rock was doing SNL. So by this point, he was big.
When you do SNL, you're big.
Yeah. And then Ice-T, he was a rapper, so he was known for that. And Judd Nelson was from Breakfast Club, which was only a few years before, so people knew him too. So yeah, I mean, Wesley may have been, at least for a mainstream audience, less known.
And Alan Payne was in a bunch of movies in the 90s. I'm not sure the timeline of all his joints, but I remember he was pretty big. I remember seeing him on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And he was doing a lot of work.
Because I only know him from House of Pain, ironically.
Speaking of Will Smith and Fresh Prince, he was in a movie and he played Jada Pinkett's boyfriend or his love interest. Jason's Lyric, that's what it was called. Oh,
okay. Another one. we're not going to talk
We're not
about.
gonna be messy. We're not gonna be messy today.
We're not going to get entangled with that situation.
It's so stupid.
But yeah, so we meet Wesley as Nino Brown with rest in peace Bill Nunn as Dada Man, hanging this white dude, I guess a stockbroker or something, off of the, what is that? The George? No, that's not the George Washington. That's like
it's the George Washington Bridge, I think.
It's one of them bridges. I should know, but I didn't pay attention. And Nino's like, basically, no money, no product, or no product, no money, or one of the two. And then he's like, see ya, and I wouldn't want to be ya. And they drop this man into the Harlem River, and it's like, I mean, it's such a way to introduce Nino as this ruthless guy, and like he gets more ruthless as the movie goes on.
Insane,
yeah, and you get to a point where you're like, okay, now, like, because there's always with gangster movies, the whole thing is making you identify with the gangster and understanding why they are the way they are, and like, and it's cathartic because you obviously wouldn't necessarily do these things, but like you're watching someone enact on them, and that's part of what makes them fun. But by the end of the movie, you're like, Nino's a scumbag, bro, and we'll get there. So we meet Scotty and Pookie. Scotty's played by Ice-T and Pookie is played by Chris Rock. So I was a little confused. I don't know if it was Scotty doing like he was faking a deal or something. Yeah. Okay, and then Pookie figured it out and like and ran from him.
No, he just tried to rob him.
Oh, Pookie tried to rob Scotty. Got you. Yeah, and then they booked it. And that, speaking of over budget, allegedly this chase scene was improvised because it was supposed to be in cars, but they were over budget by that point in the shoot. It was a 36-day shoot, I think they said, and and they were out. So it was just like Chris Rock saw a bike, he got on it, and Ice-T ran after him, and that was the scene. But they're basically. I mean, this movie is about, like Jude said at the beginning, the introduction of crack into Black neighborhoods and like how that affected said neighborhoods. And it doesn't get, I mean, everything's political, but there's no like, no one's talking about the CIA, I don't think.
No
one's
talking at the very end, when Nino is making his case in court, spoiler, right? He said, "I don't see no Uzis. We don't." I mean, no,
exactly. Yeah. No one sells Uzis in Harlem. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not from Russia.
Right.
There's like, we don't have planes to get cocaine from Colombia.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All this stuff is we're just making the best of what gets left behind in our neighborhood. Is kind of the point that he's making. And G Money introduces it to Nino. G Money, played by Alan Payne. He's like, yeah, man, this is the thing, this is a new thing. We got this going on, and it's gonna be great, and da da da. And and this is where I think we can start talking about the costume design in this movie is off the chain. I mean, there's several outfits specifically with Nino. Nino is dressed
the flyest
for the guy. For the whole film, he's dressed up, and that's kudos to Bernard Johnson, is his name. Was the costume designer. Really, I read a little bit of something about they wanted to blend, because the movie came out in 91, but it's set in 86, and they wanted to blend late 80s with 90s fashion, and you also have all this like Pan-African Black Power influence in the fashion as well, but yeah, they're driving around in this car, and they've got the chains and the turtlenecks and the
big ass rings.
Yeah, it is every Hotep's dream closet is this film pretty much. And some of mine too. Exactly. But then they go to the club right after G introduces the crack vial to Nino. They hit up the club. And what happens? I'm forgetting.
Ice-T and Wesley kind of like exchange looks. They don't know who each other is yet.
Right.
And then Wesley goes into the room with his C&B crew, and they're discussing the plans for crack, and then they introduce the idea of taking over the Carter apartments. And this one little detail that I didn't notice, well, that I realized once I saw the movie when I was a kid, CMB and the Carter, what does that remind you of, Justin?
Lil Wayne, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I learned that actually. Yeah, he named his albums after this, and Cash Money Records as well.
It just so happened Wayne's last name is Dwayne Michael Carter Jr.
Right.
But the coincidences, I'm just like, bro, it's too easy. They just gave it to you, bro.
Yeah. That was really interesting. And I mean, because when I was reading on Wikipedia, it said that it's true that his actual last name is Carter, but then also that seemed to indicate that like he was also influenced by this movie to name his albums the Carter, and also he calls himself Young Nino. Apparently sometimes I don't listen to very much Lil Wayne, so I don't know, but yeah, so they want to take over this apartment complex on 116th, which my mom was saying that she'd been there. It's not called the Carter in real life.
Graham Courts. It's called the Graham Courts.
Yes.
And it's still up there, and it's still apartments.
Yeah, they didn't actually turn it into a crack den. At least I don't think so.
And that's not a den, bro. That was like a getaway or some shit.
No, literally, that was a war zone essentially. And one of the things, like when I was writing down some notes on the themes, and one of them being idolatry, is like I think there are at least 3 major idols that different people have in the movie. The big one is money. Everyone is obsessed with money, obviously. That's the Cash Money brothers, the whole like it's the thing, even the police. And this isn't a particularly anti-police film.
It's not. And then there's another video I saw that I wanted to mention, was the idea of those hero cops and how we've been fed this trope of hero cops. And that's what Ice-T and Judd Nelson were hero cops doing the most, because the way they took down Nino was illegal.
Got you.
They didn't, their operation was shut down after the Carter blew up and
Pookie died.
And Pookie died. So they took matters in their own hands. And and as the audience is like, well, if they gotta bend the rules a little bit to take down, the god of crack, let it be. And that's a pattern a lot in gangster movies.
That is really common. That extrajudicial, like, well, we'll just do it on our own, like, take my badge, take my gun, I'll figure it out,
and then they can crack the heads they want, and then they're not served or disciplined by it.
Exactly.
I mean, and it shouldn't be that way, but like, there's still, if we all believe in our morals, there's still the law and playing by the rules.
Right. And that's really interesting, because I've also been reading, and I sent it to you, I think we've both been reading it by now, Are Prisons Obsolete? And one of the things that it's going to start talking about, I think, is like the prevalence of incarceration in media. And like how we're just we take prison for granted because we see it all the time. And the same thing goes with police, and like,
and we enjoy it.
Yeah, and there's this common thing where it's like the 2 cops, the detectives, they return to the chief at the end of the movie, and he's like, "You went behind my back, but you got the job done. Welcome back to the force," or whatever it is. And it's like, no, dude, arrest them. Pay a fine. Not how pay a fine, at least. It's not how any of this is supposed to work. And I think that for a second, I thought maybe they were doing it when Scotty, when he shoots Pookie in the ankle and he gets on top of him to stop the chase, and like everyone's gathering around and he's like, "Back off, I'm a cop." I thought they were gonna like introduce that kind of hostility between cops in the neighborhoods, but they didn't really. Also, he's reading him his Miranda rights, but he's cussing every other word, so I don't know if that counts. Like,
the right to remain fucking silent. The right for a goddamn attorney.
I don't think that's legally binding, but yeah. So it's not a particularly anti-cop film, but
and it's
one
not
of the things
supposed to be.
Yeah, I don't think so. One of the things they're
It
setting
wouldn't
up
have been made if it was like that.
right. And it's interesting that another piece of trivia that I'll just introduce now. Allegedly, Wesley wanted to play Scotty at first, but the producers had specifically written Nino for him. And part of the challenge was they knew that once they cast someone like Wesley Snipes in that role, Nino was going to be the guy that the youth wanted to be because he looked cool. He got the women, he got the money, whatever. So they needed to cast someone else as his foil who would kind of like balance that out and make good guys seem cool too, which is why they got Ice-T. But then Ice-T, like you said, Scotty, he doesn't even go. First of all, Ice-T in real life hates police. So the fact that he played a policeman is astounding to me. But
he just came out with a song called Cop Killer when this came out, bro.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm amazed that they got him to do this. But I guess part of it was the fact that he doesn't abide by the law. And so by the end of the movie, and also essentially what they do to kind of get around that is it's this personal vendetta. What they reveal over the course of the movie, which I didn't actually see them setting up, was that Wesley, at some point, we're jumping all over the place, but at some point, Scotty infiltrates the gang after Pookie gets killed trying to do so because he indulges.
We'll circle back to Pookie because I got a lot to say about Pookie.
Yeah, Pookie dies tragically, so Scotty steps in, and Wesley, Wesley, Nino, whatever, I'll call them both. He tells him, when I joined the gang, because he doesn't trust him, he's like, when I joined my first gang, they basically told me I had to kill someone, and it couldn't be an enemy. It had to, because that'd be too easy. So he walked around Harlem and he found some school teacher, a woman who said she looked like a school teacher, and he shot her in the head and dipped. And we find out by the end of the film is that was Scotty's mother. Yeah. And that gives weight to the scene. One thing my mom pointed out earlier in the movie when he's looking at the school teacher and the kids, it's not only him, being upset that he sees crack vials in the playground, but also remembering his mother because he sees the school teacher.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, and that, so they're planting seeds because then later with Pookie, he's like, you owe a lot of people. Like someone just like you killed my mother, and she didn't take no money, didn't take no jewelry, just shot her. So like you owe this to us, this whatever.
I had a lot of problems with that. Yeah, because the whole thing, it's a scared straight story about crack, and it's dressed up as a glamorous gangster movie, and it did a great job at that. It let us kind of live vicariously through those drug dealers and live vicariously through those cops of getting money but then taking somebody down. We can find places where we can live vicariously through. And then they did the scare straight shit with Pookie, right? And it showed him on crack, fucked up, and the pain, and then also him getting clean and the sobering effect of withdrawal, just really kind of showing you what happens to these addicts. And I feel like when I say that right now, I'm kind of like dehumanizing them, but they wanted to humanize them as much as they could. But where I feel like they messed up though was in those lines of saying you owe these people. That's the last thing you need to tell an addict because you're giving them a lot of pressure. Yeah. I think that was a little wrong of the writers, and it was wrong immediately to put him into, undercover with CMB. Yeah, that was wrong. But they need to move the plot along.
Of course. Yeah. And so that becomes...
And people need to die in the movie to put weight on it to make like, damn, like let's get Nino, let's get CMB down.
And so that's the next major movement is after crack is they're moving, they take over this apartment complex. They're using it as a production house, so they got the people shirtless with masks on, and which you've seen in a ton of movies, naked people cooking the crack, or I don't know how it works, of course.
You cook crack and then you violate and
Right. Okay. Yeah. So there you go.
I know nothing, but like,
so they're doing that whole thing, and the cops are trying to take them down. This is where we meet Stone, played by Mario Van Peebles, in the movie, who's like this detective, and he's like, we need to hire people who basically who know Harlem, who know this area, whatever. And the chief is like, I've got the mayor and the governor on my back, blah blah blah. And so he's like, we need to deliver results, which in real life means they need to arrest more people. But but yeah, so Stone is like, give me these two guys. They get Scotty and Judd Nelson's character Nick Peretti together, and Peretti is just like a jerk for the first 45
half of the movie.
Yeah, like he's racist, and he's routinely insults Scotty and all that. But they get them together, and it's this whole like. Then it becomes a buddy cop sort of thing in a way.
Yeah.
Them, but Ice-T's always trying to knock his head off, and that's the whole thing. Meanwhile, Nino is obviously, they're getting more and more money. They're escalating. We get the first of several dope suits that Nino wears in this, which is that orange blazer with the black, shirt underneath. That joint looks fire. Also, his hair in this movie is really impressive. They gave him a mohawk over his flat top. I don't know who cut that way, but that's extremely impressive.
It's very fire.
But yeah, and it's interesting because he and G Money are wearing inverse colors.
Yeah.
G has a black blazer with an orange shirt, and Nino has it the inverse way. But one of the things they've also introduced by this point, you remember, is the conflict with the Italians. Yeah, because which is where one of your AKAs starts getting used, and Jude can say that it's because he is half Italian, so it's not a slur for him.
Now Molian is a black dude,
right? Yeah, So it's funny because in this show, The Godfather of Harlem, which is about that dude,
Bumpy Johnson.
Yeah, Bumpy. They have an Italian presence in there too, and they're saying "mool" and everything else.
Because Harlem was Italians and black people.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah. So they had some sort of arrangement with Nino, as their distributor, and they were supposed to take a cut of the money. And Nino was like, nah, I'm big time now. I'm doing this by myself. So that caused a strife between him and the mafia. Right? Cool. The mafia show up at his party, and the dude gives him, whoever this guy is, he gives him basically a little minstrel statuette with a noose around its neck. So that's a threat. It's like this little like Uncle Tom thing with it looks like Mr. Popo from Dragon Ball Z, and Wesley.
Mr. Popo.
Right. Nino obviously has a problem with that. He takes out this cool butterfly knife and yokes the guy up and cuts his ponytail off, and then basically kicks him out, and that starts the war, the feud between the two gangs. The operation's going on with Pookie, but he starts to crack, no pun intended, under the pressure, and take some of the product for himself, which everyone notices. He gets outed by G Money at the warehouse, and then he has to get pulled out of the operation. But by that point, he's already in danger. I forget how, because they conduct
it happens so quick.
Yeah.
Like Pookie getting into the car to working for them, getting promoted, and then smoking crack again, and then dying, I feel like happened in like 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's a super fast sequence. I don't remember. I know they raid the Carter, but I don't remember how Pookie got back inside the Carter to begin with.
When they raided the Carter, Pookie gets found out, and then they just kill him, string him ass up, and then set a bomb to him. Right,
yeah. And so they get in there, they go through, but they don't find anybody. Like, they don't find Nino there, obviously. They don't find G. They don't find anyone. And all they find is Pookie, who's strapped to this chair with the bomb on his chest. Then they defuse it, and they have to bury him. But when they bury him, MVP Stone comes back. He's like, this was a failure. Like, we're pulling out, like, and then Scotty's like, that was my friend. Like, he died for nothing. So this is where, like Jude said, he and Peretti decide to take matters into their own hands, and this is where this is like the second half. This is the third act really of the movie, more than the second half, is him being like, okay, now Scotty's gonna be the drug dealer, and I'm gonna whatever name he uses, So by this point, because when the Carter gets hit is when Nino goes crazy on
the whole CMB crew.
Yeah, CMB crew, right? Oh wait, before this, I gotta go back. I'm sorry. Before this, because this is where I actually took the note. Before this is the scene where Nino meets Uniqua, G's girlfriend.
Yeah.
And they come over to his house, and he's wearing this like Jolly Rancher electric blue night suit.
Fire suit.
I need this. I don't know where I can find it.
I need his wardrobe. You know what I need? I really need the shirts. I need those pants.
Yeah.
The pants are fire. Like,
you've talked before about how you need the big and tall section.
I need the big and tall section. These pleated pants that are low key, that are high waisted but not high waters. It's just perfect.
It's immaculate, and he stands out in the scene. The color is so lush, and this is the first time we see him watching Scarface, which becomes this running thing. He watches it at least twice in the movie, and this is again. So getting back to the idol thing, the first one was money. The second one is crack. Obviously, there's a lot of people who become addicted to it, and then we see that addiction corrupt them and their environments. And then the third idol is self, and this is mostly
Nino.
Yeah, because he's completely narcissistic. He idolizes himself, but he also sees himself as Scarface, and an even better Scarface, because Uniqua says, like, he says the world is mine, and she says, but you won't be as careless as Tony Montana.
Yeah, and poor Alan Payne was like, yo, it's ours, right? Like,
right. Exactly. So, So yeah, just had to backtrack for that amazing outfit. I'm trying, because I have them notated which ones I like the most. So yeah, he finds out that the Carter was raided. He comes into the boardroom with this Rottweiler, again, immaculate outfit. Everybody's in. It looks like a Black Lives Matter photo shoot that they would do today, but it was in 1991. Everyone's in turtlenecks with the gold, and they're just like, Bill Nunn has this cool blazer on, and he comes in and he's like, "How could y'all let this happen?" Basically. I need to babysit you type of thing. This is where we get the famous line.
Sit your $5 ass down before I make change. Look at that pattern, bro.
And I don't know. Was that the first time, like, was that already a thing people said, or did that movie?
That's Nino. That's original New Jack.
Got you. Okay. Got you. Because there's... Now I know, because I've heard people say that before, but I didn't know if it was a thing that was popular. Yeah, that when he says that, it sends chills down your spine. He says it to G Money, who he's gonna stand up and step to him, and he puts the cane across his chest with a sword.
I need that too.
Yeah, you already got katanas and African daggers and stuff, bro. Just add to the collection. But yeah, so and then he stabs Kareem,
the light-skinned dude,
the who's like the tech guy, in the hand, and then he takes it out and he wipes the blood on G Money's turtleneck, and I forget exactly what he says, but he's essentially threatening them to get their act together, type of thing. So now Scotty decides he's going to meet up, with G Money, and then but by now there's this rift now between G and Nino, who are like they're first and second in command, and they're boys, but because G feels embarrassed, not only because of how he embarrassed him at the boardroom, but also because he Trey Songz'd him, he took his girl.
August Alsina him.
So that starts to cause some strife, which is why Scotty can infiltrate, because he's offering like
money
and a new kind of angle of distribution. And so G is trying to do this on the low, and as things get more and more intense, Nino personally starts kind of deteriorating his relationships and everything. At one point, Kareem sees Scotty. He's like, I know this guy, but I can't place his face right now. And there's this cool scene at the basketball court where G and Nino are playing.
Shirtless with those pants and shoes
with the slacks
and gold chains.
Playing pickup.
Why don't we do that no more?
People, I feel like
everyone's out here wearing Jordans or like the new KDs or whatever. Why doesn't no one just pull it to the basketball court in slacks and shoes?
If I knew how to play, if I like cared and knew how to play, I would. Or was good at
playing. We got to show to martial arts class when we get back out of quarantine and just show them in slacks and the fucking shoes.
That's the new uniform. Yeah, so Scotty shows up and it's this cool scene where like Nino's like, nah, man, you know, he's questioning him. He's like, I don't know you. And Scotty tries to step to him and then everyone pulls out a gun. And you got Keisha in the front.
Keisha's a gangster, the most gangster chick in the whole movie. The whole film, baby.
Played by Vanessa Estelle Williams. She pulls the gun and she has it right on Scotty's cheek. She don't play about hers. But eventually everyone calms down. And G and Scotty start to work together really kind of against Nino's knowledge and wishes. But obviously he and Judd are trying to perform this sting operation, get Nino's trust so they can lure him into a deal and catch him in the open with evidence. Yeah. Nino and Scotty are on the rooftop having that conversation about like, I shot that woman. Teacher. Yeah. And, you know, and this is where they talk about like, Scotty says, you know, what happened? Like it was business, right? Nothing personal. And Nino says, brother is always business, never personal. Yeah. And that, you know, comes back later. But we get to the warehouse scene now, I believe, unless I'm missing something. Mm-hmm. This is where Scotty shows up. Nino shows up with the CMB crew. Scotty has the briefcase. You know, it's your classic, like, we got to see him open the briefcase. We got to see him holding it or whatever. But at the exact moment that it's about to go down is when Kareem's light-skinned memory comes back to him, and he's like, and
he's like, way when he's just kneeling down.
Yeah, I don't really get like what. I guess because he saw him like that at some point. Mm-hmm. But he's also wearing like a hat and sunglasses. Anyway,
he's looking like a pimp.
Yeah.
And then when he did the thing with outfit. Yeah, beautiful outfit. But before he's in like the track suit with the dread hat, is exactly. Like.
But yeah, you let it slide. He's like, yo, I recognize him. He's 5-0. So then it gets into this firefight. Cool action sequence here. This is where Nino like really just starts murdering people. Yeah, like straight up killing people directly now. He murks that Asian kid.
Yeah.
The Asian cop with like the knife. Yeah, it's like a stealth mission in a video game. Wow. But he doesn't run into Scotty on his way out. Dada Man starts fighting with he starts fighting with Judd Nelson, but yeah, he gets lit up by Scotty from below, and then he falls down and he's still alive. And
90s logic, you know, 90s scientific logic. You know what I'm saying? Gravity wasn't invented yet. Impact wasn't invented yet.
No, neither were bullets, really. So then Judd Nelson saves Scotty's life then after the fact. And so they're like, oh, but it was a bust. Now they know who we are, whatever. And then we get to probably the most emotional scene in the film, which is on the rooftop with G and Nino. And this is where Nino finds out, like, you let that cop into our, you know, operation.
But he didn't know.
He didn't know he was a cop, no. But it was just the fact, like, you know, Nino is becoming so paranoid, and this is a common theme in gangster movies as well, is like the guy at the top, the people he came up with start to seem like they're enemies to him, and he becomes paranoid and he pushes everyone away. So G Money is like his brother, and which is why he feels even more offended. You know, and G is like, basically, you know, you turn into somebody I don't even know anymore. And this is, you know, Nino gives him basically the Godfather hug, like Pacino gives to Fredo. Broke my heart, Fredo. Before he dies, but he basically does that to him. He hugs him and he's crying. Great acting. I mean, Wesley is acting his A double dollar sign off in this movie. He is like it, and it really. I have some trivia about like other people that were considered for casting in the movie overall.
Cool.
But we'll get there after when we finish the movie. But like,
this is the
I really don't know if anyone else could have done it like Wesley. You know, I mean, so he kills this, and basically he decides he has to kill G because he betrayed him. So he shoots him in the head. Although there's no, I guess the '90s didn't have headshots.
Special effects.
Yeah, it's just like and he falls down like he's in a stage play. But right before he dies, you know, G says, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Which is like the CMB creed. Yeah. And Nino responds, "Yes, I am," before he shoots him. Yeah. So coming to the end now, I think this is when Selena breaks up with him, his girlfriend?
She been broke up with him.
Oh, that happened a minute ago. Yeah.
I feel like it happened a minute ago, and you know there was the wedding scene that we kind of skipped over.
Oh, the wedding! We did skip that. You're right. Yeah. We got to talk about that. When does that happens?
When he used the girl as a bulletproof shield, that little girl.
That's where. Yeah, that's my bad. That's
when the Italians, when everything was coming down.
That's where you're like, oh, he's the worst.
He's a piece of shit.
Yeah. Because he's coming. So there's this wedding scene between who's it between? It's like
no one important.
Yeah. But the guy officiating it, actually, another mom tip. He's from this singing duo, Ashford and Simpson, which were from like the 70s. There was a husband and wife. And another fantastic Nino Brown outfit, this black asymmetrical suit he has with the gold. It looks like a military jacket. And then he has like the T-shade tints. Immaculate. He looks like reference. I'm not even going to hold you. He looks like I was like, this is it. And that's shot at Grant's tomb, which is it's along Riverside, like 130 something. They're having this wedding. The caterers are actually mafia. They're there to do a hit. And this little girl, she picks up the wedding cake ornament. She comes down the stairs. She drops it. She comes back to get it. Nino kneels down to say hi to her. What's up? And then he notices the mafia, and they open. It just oozes everywhere. Yeah, so they open up. He starts running, but then he doubles back for the girl, and you think, oh, he's going to save her. But instead, he picks her up and holds her out in front of him to be a bullet sponge, and then drops her again, then takes out a gun. She didn't get hit, thank God. Takes out a gun and does like a Matrix dive before the Matrix behind some cover, and they're having this shootout. Keisha goes out like a warrior, although she doesn't take anyone with her, which I was kind of upset with. But she slides out with the Uzi in front of her.
Where is she sliding? This is concrete, bro. Where is she sliding? On her knees?
I don't know how they did that. Yeah, she definitely did it was like a rock star slide.
Like,
but she gets taken out. Then there's this moment, actually, this is important, where Scotty has to decide whether he's going to try to take out Nino now or do it the right way, quote unquote, and arrest him. So he points his gun at Nino for a second, and he's like, nah, let me, whatever. And he has to go save the girl himself. He goes and picks her up. Yeah. So Keisha dies, and after that, Nino retaliates by sending a drive-by to the mafia and just takes them out in broad daylight.
Yeah, lit everybody ass up.
So
everyone dies in broad daylight in this movie, bro. Like the Jamaican dude in the beginning.
Yeah.
That hit at the wedding, the hit on the Italians. The only person who dies at night is motherfucking Alan Payne and Pookie.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that kind of shows, like, because even you check the Citizen app and someone's getting ganked 2 blocks away from me every day, like 3 times a day. I don't know who, so it does happen. And that's really, I didn't think about that. Yeah. Just how careless they are, We should also talk about the old man character, because you see him when they're taking over the car, they pull I guess he's the landlord or whatever. They pull him out butt naked. And they're like, now you're going to give control of this place to us again. In broad daylight, they line up everyone in the building around the block. But the camera focuses on this old man who goes into the police precinct, and he's like, yo, man, y'all send cops there every time, for much less than this. We got gangsters taking over our home, and you don't want to help us out. So he's frustrated. He comes to see Nino directly when Nino was like sitting in some, I don't know, club or something, giving out money to kids. The old man comes in and he's like,
and it's about that I want to say.
Oh yeah. But he's like, you're an idolater. These kids shouldn't be around you. You're bad for the community. And this is another way that Scotty gains. This is the way that he gains Wesley's trust. He gains Nino's trust because old man pulls out a gun on Nino to shoot him, and then Scotty
wrestles him away
and kicks him out. But old man comes back later. What were you going to say about the kids?
Nah, when Nino did that scene, and it's like a cliche scene, but he's not just like giving the kids money or whatever. He's, of course, planting seeds to like maybe get workers in the future or whatever. But he's buying idolization. He's buying his ego, giving these kids money. And I noticed that with a lot of celebrities with charity and shit like that, they're kind of like buying our admiration, buying our idolization of them. So that's just a little thing I noticed.
Yeah,
with Nino and with all people like that, they're buying.
Because how can Nino
they're buying
be that?
social status?
He gave me $20 or whatever it was. Yeah, once I'm forgetting, there's maybe a few steps between the warehouse and then obviously how they find where Nino lives. I guess is that just when they find those kids on the street?
Yeah, that was fucking weird.
Yeah, they're like, he's up there. He's on the 6th floor with his girl.
No one stitches that quick on someone that big like Nino Brown. I'm like,
just for Ice-T. Yeah, okay. But whatever. They raid the apartment. He's watching Scarface again. They get into a fight, and this is where Scotty just
busts through the window.
He comes through the window
with a nigga on his chest.
Yeah. They get into a little bit of a fight, and this is, Wesley Snipes in real life is like a 5th degree in Shotokan, and like he's a martial artist, but in this movie he has to pretend that he's a street fighter. So I guess he does it pretty believably, but he gets beat up viciously. I mean, like I think this is what, they go down the fire escape. He throws him into the trash pile, and then he's just working him over.
And he jumps off the building. Same Matrix logic.
and he's beating him up, and he's like, he's like, I want to kill you.
My dick's hard. So bad. My dick's hard. It's a scene
with like a weird Ice-T face. He looks high, which could almost be something if the movie was more anti-police. It would be like. That would be saying something, but he doesn't kill him, even though he tells him like the woman that you killed was my mother, and they convince him to like back off his partners Stone and Peretti. So Nino's like, I'll be out in a week, and then you're a dead man. Then they go to court, and this is where I actually thought of you, because this is where like Nino straight up says the problem is that drugs aren't legal, and then he goes into a whole thing, and I was like.
Listen, I'm no Nino Brown. I'm no anything. I'm just a philosophy major with a father who's a heroin addict, and I think that all drugs should be legal for the safety and well-being of the people we love in our communities, and I think it'll be a good thing.
I mean, the idea is that the theory is that it would eliminate the trade, right? Because it's not illegal anymore, and he makes the comparison to prohibition. How alcoholism actually got worse once alcohol was outlawed, and that's the whole, that was part of the whole problem. But he gives a little bit of a speech, but eventually, because he says like he basically offers, he threatens to take everyone else down with him in the CMB, so they give him like 3 years with the possibility of.
They gave that nigga 5 minutes in jail, and he said the light-skinned dude was the leader of the CMB. And
exactly. Like, so of course Scotty is pissed off, but on his way out of the courtyard, Nino was talking to the press. He's like, I think he said something about like I believe in the. Doesn't he say something like I believe in the
American justice system? I think it's fair. Da, 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 da.
Hi, Mom. Yeah. is what he says that. I wasn't saying hi to my actual mom. He says hi, mom, to the camera. And then that's when I think you were about to say old man shows up. Yeah, he pulls up to the courtyard. He says, "Idolater, your soul is requested in hell," and he shoots him in the chest. And it's a great death scene. I mean, he really like gets hit, and his shoulders scrunch, and then he falls over the edge of the stairway, and then you see him at the bottom, and that's the movie ends after that. But it's also kind of symbolic because of obviously his fall from hell, like you talked about at the beginning. So, yeah, that's the plot of the movie.
We just said the whole movie without the lines.
Yeah, pretty much. That's if you wanted to watch New Jack City a little non-linearly, you could just listen to us talk about it instead. We'll take a little break, and then we'll come back with some of our thoughts. Okie dokie, and we're back. So, New Jack City, 1991, directed by Mario Van Peebles, written by Thomas Lee Wright, Barry Michael Cooper, and shot by Francis Kenny. My overall thoughts, as soon as I watched it, I really, really like it. I think that it's a classic for a reason. You can kind of see why this, especially for Wesley Snipes, was the catalyst that it was for the rest of his career. And I think it speaks to his range as an actor. You know, I think a lot of other actors would have made this a very one-note performance of like, I'm the smug, arrogant drug lord. I'm angry all the time, whatever. But Wesley gives Nino a lot of depth and a lot of flaws that you can see kind of as the movie goes on.
But not a lot of shining thing. Like, there's not a lot of good things to say about Nino Brown, but like a lot of superficial good things to say about Nino Brown. Like, he's fly, he's cool, he gets the girls.
Exactly.
You know, he has money, he has ambition, but you cannot say a lot of good things about Nino Brown, which is another thing the movie wanted to do too. 100%. They wanted to give someone you can idolize superficially, but then quickly be like, nah, this nigga a dickhead.
Yeah.
Let me not
be
like this guy.
Once you think about it, and I mean, even because there was even a point where I was like, half of me just for the outfits wants to say AKA Nino Brown on our next episode. But
yo, bro, AKA came up with Nino Tan.
It works.
You know?
I mean, you know, one of mine is Skinnier Shug, but like, so that's a real life killer. So, but yeah, the movie definitely doesn't want you to idolize him, and I think that they do an effective job at showing that he is not to be. His life isn't one that you want. And I read something interesting. Roger Ebert, one of the things he said about the movie was Truffaut once said it was impossible to make an anti-war movie because the war sequences would inevitably be exciting and get the audience involved on one side or the other. It is almost as difficult to make an anti-drug movie since the lifestyle and money of drug dealers looks like fun, at least until they're killed. This movie pulls off that tricky achievement. Nino, who looks at the dead body of Scarface and laughs, does not get the last laugh. And they, you know, when he falls and he's on his face and everyone is looking at him, you know, it's embarrassing, and that's but he had it coming. And that's what the movie is ultimately trying to say. You know, it has a lot to say about obviously idolatry, greed, envy, and then the other big thing is brotherhood. One of the other big themes, because the Cash Money gang calls themselves a brotherhood and a family, and the way that so that when we lose characters over the course of it, or when characters betray each other, we feel that.
And I think the real family and brotherhood in the movie is Ice-T and Pookie.
Yeah.
You know, it started out with him shooting Pookie in the ankle, tore that nigga Achilles apart.
Right.
You know, but then sees what he did and feels bad for Pookie and empathizes with him and goes and gets him clean.
Yes.
That is, you know, you have to have unconditional love for another human being to take them to, you know, rehab.
And
stay with him. Yeah. That montage was
very,
you know,
I thought that was effective.
Staying with him, holding him. Yeah. And you'll see a lot of black men showing a lot of affection
to each other. Yes.
And there was like no talking. I remember Mario Van Peebles was talking about it. There's not a lot of talking in those scenes, and it's a good montage. Like a lot of montages, you think is just all like 80s, like training and the Rocky movies, or like just the rise, like in when they were taking over the Carter. But you just saw, someone come out of the ashes and being cared for, and get better, and you hear all these stories, and they were not over exaggerated. I mean, I can't say anything. I don't know anyone with those exact stories, but they just wanted to hit you with the worst stories. Like I had a crap baby; she was born blind. I was doing it because my friends were doing it. Everyone's doing it. I mean, they played those tropes because it's 91. Like everyone's still learning about
what this does to people.
What this does to people, what addiction does to people, because addiction research wasn't that thorough back then.
Yeah.
But it did its job with scaring people straight. But I think the humanization and empathizing of addicts, and then showing the healing process of an addict, was an important part of the movie. I think that's where the movie shines the most.
Yeah, I agree that I really buy their friendship. Like by the end of the movie, and I should say by the time Pookie dies, I do believe that Scotty cared about him. And I think an interesting point about the fact that the montage is mostly silent. Mario Van Peebles talks about how he verbally directed Chris through a lot of his dramatic scenes. So that he hit certain points, which is why it's like, I know that this isn't going to have sound, so I'll just be talking and then we'll take the sound out later. I thought that it was honestly like Chris Rock isn't someone that I necessarily take seriously, but when he was talking about when he was saying it be calling me, he's talking about when he was talking about crack, and I just got to go to it. I felt that, and you see even on Ice-T's face, he feels it too. And he's like, look at this kid who, and again, so close to being like anti-cop. He's almost like, look at this kid who I kind of caused this. Like I shot him in the ankle. I disabled him. He turned to this. I'm sure he was already kind of experimenting. He
was already in the street.
Yeah, but he turned into this homeless. He shows up at the food drive that Nino puts on. Yeah. And he's just a mess. I mean, so like, he feels that guilt, and that drives the friendship. But then, like you said, he turns it around. He's like, you owe me this now,
but also I think that was also stress. He was stressed because of the operation.
True. He was. But yeah, I definitely 100% buy their friendship. This film also premiered at Sundance, which is cool. It went to Sundance Film Festival in January 1st, and then it came out in March later in the year. As far as other trivia, it's allegedly based on the Chambers brothers, who were a sibling gang in Detroit during the 1980s. There were 4 brothers in the core group who had 3 sisters and then another set of twin brothers. And they also took over an apartment complex called the Broadmoor in Chicago. So it's interesting because Wesley...
It's not dope.
Well, it is literally dope, but it's not cool. Yeah, Wesley talks about how, like, in that interview you sent me, he's like, I had a couple friends who knew a couple people that did a couple things, and I would hang out with those certain people and watch them do certain things so that I could learn how to, he's being very coy, but that apparently he did research like that. This film was also released within 6 months of Boys in the Hood, and 5 days after the Rodney King beating went public. So
5 days after that? Oh, that's crazy.
5 days after, yeah. So it was very obviously, I guess I should say topical to a certain extent. I mean, they couldn't have predicted that the Rodney King thing was going to happen, and that people would probably hate cops a lot more than is depicted in this movie. Yeah, things happen. But fun thing, we could talk about some alternate casting. So I have 4 roles here that were meant to be cast, or that initially these people auditioned or they were considered. So I'll go from least important character to most. Apparently, for the role of Keisha, Vivica A. Fox auditioned, which I could see.
Vivica.
I could see
the one that ate 50 Cent's ass. I'm messy, bro. I'm the messy one.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Oh,
so
me. I'm sorry. Your son has to hear this. Yo, bro, I gotta tell you this. One of my mother's friends, her son, who's like 15, listens to the podcast, and it's like this British family.
Oh.
And it's and they're like OD. They're not OD, but they're very religious. And I gotta like, yo, what's up, kid?
But it's funny also because my mom said that this is the episode. She's gonna listen to this one because she wants to hear what we have to say about New Jackson. Oh Lord!
She's gonna be like, "Oh, Jude has a good point. This boy."
She's gonna immediately turn it off. No, but at least we'll have gotten through 48 minutes without anything like that. No, but at least we're listen, HvO.
And Vivica A. Fox is bad chick.
Yeah, I could definitely see Vivica. Also, just the fact that we have a British family listening to us, Harlem World for real. We got an Australian cover artist. We got British fans. We're everywhere. So that was for Keisha. Then for Pookie, Martin Lawrence auditioned, but he dropped out.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, though, Martin Lawrence could not do that well.
You think he'd be maybe a bit hard to take seriously, even harder than Chris Rock?
Yeah.
Was Martin out by then? Martin was going?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if the show was out, but I know Martin was out doing stand up, and so was Chris. But Martin is just way more of like a funny.
He's more of like a clown.
Yes. Chris Rock is conscious with his comedy. Yeah. Martin will joke about baby mama drama, and so will Chris Rock, but he'll joke about more hood things. Right. But Chris Rock will take things political, make things about rap music, or like
Martin actually
make things real. Yeah, go ahead.
So Martin debuted August 27, 1992. So he was filming it when this movie came out.
He's probably busy or whatever.
Yeah,
but
he also allegedly it had to do with a mentor of his passed away, and he just felt like he wasn't. Yeah. He didn't want to take it anymore. It says somewhere on the IMDb page. Robin Harris.
Okay. I'm gonna say, but I don't think Martin Lawrence would have done a good job with that at all. I think Chris Rock was perfect.
Oh, Robin Harris from House Party. The guy who plays the dad in House Party. Yeah, he died, and he was, he and Martin were close. Yeah, so that may not have been a good. For G Money, you'll be interested in this. Tupac auditioned, but they didn't want him because he looked younger than Wesley. He looked too young. But then he wound up in Juice, which is.
But Alan Payne is younger than Wesley in that. You mean Tupac looks older or the same age?
No, they said like. Hang on, I'm gonna find it.
Tupac did look 17 though in Juice. Like they looked like they were in high school.
It says. Blah, blah, blah. Tupac Shakur auditioned for the role of G Money, but was turned down due to the fact that he looked younger than Wesley Snipes. Shakur would later portray Bishop in Juice, a character similar to that of Nino Brown.
Okay.
So.
Yo, you know who Tupac was also supposed to play?
Who?
Mace Windu.
That's right.
That would have been fucking fire. That would have been fire. I'm sorry. I love Sammy. I love you, Sammy. That would have been fire.
I don't know, but I've also. So, I mean, spoiler alert, kind of a reveal. One of the movies we're going to be watching is Juice because I also haven't seen that. So I've never seen.
I haven't seen anything though. I'm sorry, Justin. It kills me. It kills me.
So I haven't seen Tupac act, so I can't say whether or not he would have fit this role or. I mean, Mace Windu is like. That's a very particular kind of role, but Sam Jackson is pretty much just being Sam Jackson in that without cussing.
Motherfucker.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so Tupac was considered, and then finally for Nino Brown, Blair Underwood was considered.
Not flamboyant enough. Not that charismatic in the way of like the big drug dealer.
Yeah.
He is. Blair Underwood is tactical.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Like when I was talking about the range of the performance, I feel like with Blair Underwood, not to say he doesn't have range, but it definitely would have been more like it would have been more, this is the sinister, like, you know, I'm gonna kill you any second type of thing. And he may not have been as likable, because Blair Underwood, like I mean, the movie I first saw him in and that I always associate him with is when he played an abusive husband in Family Reunion, Medea's Family Reunion. He's smacking.
Oh, he just set it off too.
Yeah, he's smacking someone around in that movie. I think is it Kimberly.
Everyone's getting slapped in a damn Tyler Perry movie.
Yeah.
Fuck that nigga.
it's his primary storytelling tactic. But yeah,
black woman gets beat, finds Jesus.
Huh?
That's the way Tyler Perry tells the story. Beats a black woman, finds Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, finds a man that's light skinned.
Yeah, Omar Epps with those cornrows and Mad Black Woman with like the cornrow rig. We're not going to be watching any Tyler Perry movies, don't worry, because I've seen most of them and they're not worth talking about, really. But yeah, so that I think the cast is pretty solid. I mean, the only one maybe from this list, again, Vivica Fox could have been Keisha, but also this woman, whoever she is, did a great job.
What about Ice-T? Who was on track for that? Or was it just Ice-T, one-shot deal? They found their guy. That was it.
Yeah, I didn't see anything about anyone else considered for the role of Scotty. And I also shouldn't say, by the way, whoever she is, because I said her name earlier, Vanessa Williams. It's her film debut. This was her first movie. Playing Keisha. Yeah. So good for her. Yeah. She definitely did a great job with the role she had. But yeah, I don't think anyone else was considered for Scotty. And again, that's interesting because, like, I mean, one thing that they said was he kind of wound up being a co-director because he knew kind of like that lifestyle in a way that Mario didn't. So he was able to kind of advise in that regard. But yeah, I think overall, obviously, we both like New Jack City. We would both recommend it, probably.
Absolutely. It's fun. Pop some popcorn.
Yeah. And I think it holds up. I think that like what it has to say is still mostly relevant. It doesn't have anything. Yeah, it doesn't have anything too problematic, quote unquote, aside from, like you said, the sort of victim blaming with addiction. And also, you could make a case.
Cop trope.
Huh?
And the hero cop trope.
The hero cop trope, and then also you have, Dada Man stutters, and there's like two scenes where he gets kind of made fun of for it, and then he never really gets a chance to like. I mean, he has a heroic death, so to speak, but he doesn't get a chance to like redeem himself for that per se. So it's like maybe it's a little ableist too, but
yeah.
But other than that, it still holds up, and we would definitely we would advise y'all to check it out if you haven't seen it. Of course, I think we can keep the tradition going as far as
I was just about to say that. What you got for me, bro?
Let me see here what I've been bumping. I feel like I'll just limit it to one we'll see. I was gonna say like our playlist is already like 3.5 hours, so if we ever have any live events, like we're covered.
We are, man. It's wild.
But let me see. You have yours?
Yeah. 44 Bulldog, Pop Smoke from his album that just came out. It's fantastic. Bubba Chuck by West Side Gun. I'm repeating the same people every time, man. Like they just put out an album on the same day, bro. Like I can't fucking help it.
Right.
And Smoking Grams by J Grams with Smoke Dizza.
Honestly, I haven't really listened to anything new this week, that's not really we just talk about whatever we're listening to. But I guess I'll call out Generique by Miles Davis, which is a nice, just smooth jazz song. What else? I also like recently. Did I already say it? Yeah, I did. I like this song Wrongs, which is another still on my British rap tip by Krept and Conan featuring Jhené Aiko, and 220 by Kaylin Hallman, which was one of the songs that played during our photo shoot when we were in front of that defund the police poster.
That's problematic, aren't we?
Yeah, it's fine. But on that note, yes, next film up in the roster is Friday. I think we're gonna lighten it up, and we're gonna check out Friday. So
be great.
Tune in again before June is out to hear our thoughts on that. If you want more Uptown Love, as always, you can find our episodes, new and old, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you like listening to podcasts. There we are.
Sir.
We will see you all next time. Blessings and excellence. Be well.
Peace out, mates.